Hello everyone and welcome to Hyperspace Deck Command, where in today's I will be covering the auxiliary ships, which is actually the last on the list. The reason I don't include flagship is because they're random every single time. Typically I just end up taking the thing with the highest health in the faction my commander is from, unless I have a very specific thing planned that's, you know, for once in a blue moon actually available, or does what an auxiliary does, but slightly better, which is to say that plays very little part. So, like the other two videos I have done, if you haven't seen those, check them out. I will be putting them in a playlist. I have a tier list, and I'll be ranking them from A to D, and if I think something's really bad, I'll put it in the rework section, although the auxiliaries, I don't think any of them really need to be reworked. So, yeah. So, to start us off, we have the EM. No, I'm not even going to bother him about his names, but the EM auxiliary does 2 damage every 3 rounds, which is a bit faster than the usual 4, and it has 3 hull. Essentially, you're putting this thing behind your flagship, and occasionally it will stun an enemy. In reality, this thing is just 2 damage and breaks the second EM adaptation comes into play. It's not exactly the best in my opinion, and this is the one you unlock out of the gate. I mean, you can't get the most overpowered thing out of the gate, but I'm gonna be honest, it kinda sucks. Especially when compared to the one that's actually really close to it, which would be the field frigate. And what this thing does is it has 2 extra health in the form of shields, so you know, piercing goes through them. It's just extra health. It has 5 health pretty much. A 3-turn timer as well, still does 2 damage, and it puts containment on the enemy ships, which will reduce their damage by 1. So in my opinion, more health, same damage, better ability. This is just a straight upgrade. Which is to say, I didn't show any of that. Here it is for reference. I have to mess it up at least once per video. So with all of that considered, where would I put it? Frankly, not great. Like, when there's a good one, you'll know it's good. But when they're not great, I don't almost say a D, but it can somewhat be a tank. And yes, I would like to have an A from every faction. I don't know if that's happening. However, the Light Destroyer is incredibly strong. Every time you put any quantity of AM on the ship, you get +1 free. Which is to say, if you put 1 AM, you get 2. You put 5, you get 6. So quantity is not exactly quality on this. However, with only 3 turns per time it shoots, doing a base of 2 damage and having 3 hull, the Light Destroyer is actually surprisingly powerful, for it has a form of ramping. Which is to say, every time you... Like, I've actually won a game with this. And, Shiv God, because Shiv God can easily apply more AM. So, frankly, I'm not sure AM is not listed here. AM just increases, AM loaded gives you +1 damage per stack, and seated makes you take an additional damage per stack. But yeah, no, I have won a game with this. I actually had to use a shield, because with Shiv Lord, I was taking a ton of damage, just like 6 damage in 1 turn on this thing, so. What is my verdict? The Light Destroyer is really strong. Highly recommend. And would I say it's game-changing? No, but every faction needs an A-class, and this thing is pretty damn solid. But like, A is basically reserved for things that would actually make a build around and due to it actually being useful. As you'll see, that's not exactly that common, unfortunately. Because up next we have the Lane Guard. The Lane Guard gives 2 chaff, EM chaff. And what EM Chaff does is it does what EMP does, except only when their timer is at 1. However, if you shock an enemy with Chaff, it'll become more EM. What does this mean, you might be wondering? It's kind of an occasionally worse version than this one. To make up for this, it has +1 health, +1 damage, and that's about it. I'm gonna be honest, Chaff on demand is great. I would say it's on par, if not better than EM. However, at random, it's worse. I personally am not a fan of that one. And the main thing you'll see when it comes to these auxiliary, the main thing here I'm going to be rating them on is how well they ramp up their damage. Because there are some that have an insane influx of damage, which can win you games, which is what the auxiliary kind of does. I play them to win the game. I don't normally, yeah, sure, I could use the Light Destroyer, or I could gamble on a low chance to get the Matter Destroyer. And this thing attacks twice a round, which is to say, you do double damage, and you even inflict AM seeding. So, relatively speaking, you might lose the first buff, but that's still kind of... It does great ramping. The Matter Destroyer is just... It feels... It's not a direct, but it's an indirect upgrade to the Light Destroyer, and it hits really hard. Otherwise, you could do an even rarer gamble to try and get the Persecutor class, which goes every 3 rounds. So if you put 1 AM on, instead of getting 2 damage, you get 3 damage. Then 6 damage. And that just keeps going up. Or again, well, not exactly, yeah, no, because it's a multiple of 3. So I once got this up to 22 times 3. Final boss, it dropped pretty fast. I got to attack me twice and then died. Yeah, truly an incredible combo. However, you could bank on, ships showing up, but they're a little rare, so I try to keep all my builds. I like to have auxiliary be the 4-man of my build, so Light Destroyer is pretty good. Pardon me, when we got back. Here is the Escort Hunter Killer. Fun name, isn't it? Very quirky. Anyways, what it does is it's a Crip ship. It has a higher than average at 5 timer, 3 damage, which is actually higher than I thought it had. Hull integrity of 3, and what it does is it inflicts target lock, and has a crit multiplier of 3, which means it will do 9 damage if it hits a target that already has a target lock on them. Or if you put target lock, or I forget what the buff version is for some reason right now. But if you buff the ship itself, that would still apply. So you might think this is actually really good. That's 9 damage every 5 rounds. This is really strong. The downside is that means for 5 rounds, nothing else can hit that ship except for the Escort Hunter Killer, unless you give, lock or, crit. I forget what it's called when you buff yourself. But unless you do one of those, you're only going to do 3 damage. So you have to really play into this being your only combat ship. Or alternatively, if you find a really good flagship for a mine build, which is not very common, I think they might have actually removed the combination. It's yeah, it's hard to play around this one. You have to keep in mind, the ships move down every 4 rounds. So this thing is really, really slow. You actually do a significant amount of damage with your mega ship until you can ramp up your other ships. This doesn't have ramping. Putting multi-action on this would actually be fantastic. So find the assault mod, like the assault rig, and suddenly you're doing what? A guarantee of 12 damage, and you're leaving a crit. Honestly, now that I say that out loud, this thing's not bad. Does that mean I like it? You could always give the, overdrive or something. I don't know. It's a bit niche, it takes a lot more strategy, and I kind of want to brain that option where the enemy will crumble upon mere glance, but what I think of it, honestly, I think it's solid B. I was gonna put in like C or D, but like, if you really play into it, you can make that work. Guaranteed. It's not exactly my build style. I still think it's a B though. Because double action on this would be really good. Alternatively, if you don't mind having it go every 6 rounds, you could put the Kill Director, who probably would synergize with this, and then you'd always have double action, which would be very good. Anyways, moving on. We have the Mercenary Fire Juggler V6. Essentially, mercenaries are ships you have to pay to show up. That includes if you send them back for repairs and then call them back out. And if they die, in quotes, they just bail. Like, I've never actually experienced it, but apparently they just straight up bail from your deck permanently. So, these tend to be very strong, at least the ones you can find, and that makes mercenaries, really powerful, but that's not a mercenary. No, it's not. This one's insanely strong as well. The lane guard scaffold. But you look here, right? This is a Merc 16 purse. You basically have to buy it every time. Every time it goes on a very short timer, it gains a shield, and it inflicts a target lock. Does 2 damage. That's, as you can imagine, this is pretty damn good. But this one deals +2 per enemy on orbit. That's also a pretty good one. Like, there are some mercenaries in here, which is like, it's very strong. This does scatter. Wow. I normally don't use the mercenaries because I'm not exactly a huge fan of paying for those ships, and it also kind of blocks you from using shops, and it's a bit of a commotion, but they can be quite strong. And the unique thing here with Fire Juggler is as long as they don't have, security on their ship, which can put out fires, this can keep another ship on fire with ramping indefinitely. It's gonna start doing by one damage, then after like 2 rounds you do more damage. So it's very good. I'd also even recommend putting Blaze Runner. As you can see, there's a bit of synergies amongst matching them all together. However, in some cases, they're better off on their own without being matched. James Rice has a damage symbol instead of the AM symbol. I don't know. Personally, what I think of Fire Juggler, I'm not actually a huge fan of it. I think it's in the B. And you're probably saying ramping damage with fire sounds really strong. And well, I would like to agree. My problem with it is that once that enemy burns up, the next enemy doesn't have the debuff, so you have to start over. So if you can get it to only target the boss, you're gonna do just so well. But it's slow ramp up, right? It feels like a handicap, which is why I'm putting it lower than I would like. I'm gonna be honest, I don't exactly like the trade union. I do very niche builds. Like, I either do a cargo build, or, use their refueling hub mega ship because it's incredibly powerful. Trade hub for humor. I don't really use the trade outpost. Like, it's definitely a niche faction. You get Dazzle Vector, great for using a container run extremely fun, highly recommend. You get this faction really easily, you just have to clear the third boss, which is a bit of a road bump, but, you know, I believe in you. So, definitely niche stuff, but Fire Juggler is interesting. Not my cup of tea, and I have tried it, but let's move on to the Medic class V9. So what the Medic class does is it just applies +1 max health to the unit in front. Now I believe this got nerfed recently. Before, this used to do its orbit, so every ship on the orbit, excluding itself, is what I think it used to do, plus an additional 2 damage every 4 rounds. I don't remember them changing it to the unit in front to do plus or minus 1 max health. So that's new to me. But besides that, I mean, especially with that change, I mean, I didn't think they were too good to begin with. I especially don't now. When you want to do armor strip, you want to do it in like bulk, like excessively, or armor plating. I don't know. It's just, to me, it's not great. I might even say B tier because that is increasing my. It's so slow and does so little. For like, I don't find any healing auxiliaries to be worth time. They're just not that impressive. So it goes in C tier, right? And plus, if you want to try and make a strong build with them, you probably, you know, aren't caring about your mega ship, flagship. You do definitely care about your meg. I don't know. I'm not too surprised, like too impressed by them. Next up is the Speaker class. Very simple ship, no damage, applies 3 borders, security or borders, to the ship in front of it. Now, personally, I actually quite like the idea of this ship. As like a buffing thing, you can apply a buff to your flagship, try and capture an enemy ship. Borders are extremely useful, or security is a very useful thing. However, there's literally no ramping, and it's just kind of useful. I mean, I think I've won a game with that, but I lucked out with rolling some other ships. So, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, you know, must take ship. It's fine. C tier. You're gonna notice I've put a lot of these low because they have to actually be very useful for me to really consider taking them. But don't worry, things are turning around. Which is to say, the up next we have. Here we go. Remember what I say about mines always being an A? The Innovator class and Nano, or Inventor class, this thing is no different. This thing is overpowered. And I take this thing for a multitude of reasons. Either A, because it's a tank card to allow me to try and do a flagship build, or just roll a better card. It has defense bind, which is basically pseudo retaliate, and it's just really strong. It adds the defense I need in the early game. However, with Minekeeper, the refueling hub, so Spike Wizard refueling hub, and Lane Guard Scaffold, which I forget how to unlock, but you apply all of these, and keep in mind, when this gets hit by a fuel rocket, that gets a buff. Suddenly, this thing gets a little insanely broken, and doing 23 damage every time it's hit to the enemy adds up rapidly, and getting a decent healer like the Officer class, which I guess I might as well show, well, you know, I might as well explain what it is I am trying to do. I'd also use it with the Cluster MDS. That's just a flat 3 mines for 1 damage, which is... when you have extensive healing, it's nothing, but yeah. This applies 3 borders and 2 max HP. And if you're thinking this sounds like the straight upgrade of the Speaker class, it literally is just the upgrade. There is typically an upgraded version of ships. However, that's not always the case. For example, the mine one, it doesn't really have an upgrade, which is interesting. I don't like that. But the rest tend to. Oh, that's interesting. Huh. The short and simple of this, I haven't seen this one in ages. The short and simple is that this inventor class Nano, oh boy, solid A tier. Mines are simply balanced more than others, and that's gonna stay true for the entire game. What can I say? Next up, we're on to the launch plank. And the launch plank is a simple one, which simply gives itself bomber escorts, and does no base damage. Bomber escorts can only target in front, but they do X amount of damage every round, decreases by 1. What do I think of this? Sorry, tracking is not too good. A class. This thing is really strong. Highly, highly recommend. Yeah, we're doing A's back to back now. We're getting to the good stuff. And the reason for this is because, like I said, bombers, they do X damage every round. Now, 2 damage every round is underwhelming, but if you leave this thing out of the fight, right, and you mix it, I guess I could show this. You mix it with the Floatoid Flock Nemesis Commander, this will make it so you gain an extra bomber every time it goes off. This is also that, you get an extra bomber, so we're up to 4, you can keep using this one, I'd recycle this, and since it's on a 4-round basis, you know, let's say, hey, you know, I just plot, like, it's up to 5 per, and it just sent out 5, take your EMP torpedo, which can energize your unit by 3, hit your launch plank, now you've just added 10 on top of your original 14, that's 14 damage every round, with a very slow little taunt, like it slowly whittles down, and then, you know, if you really luck out, and you roll yourself the one construct that synergizes literally perfectly with pretty much everything, the ASC Jameroid, you get this thing, so now those bombers are permanent. I mean, it doesn't even feel necessary half the time, but like, yeah, no, that thing, it is really strong and it hits like a truck. So, launch plank, highly recommend. I'm going to clear the screen up a little bit. Welcome to a new background. And now we're talking, that's, okay, well, I scrolled too far down. I've failed everyone. That never happened. Leave a comment saying that never happened. Yeah, I mean, that would drive up engagement, I guess. Up next is the Scout Carrier, which, you can believe it, has scouts in it. So the short and simple of this is it has 4 health, 2 fighter escorts. Yes, I got that right, I didn't read it. And every 4 rounds, it creates 2 scout pairings, which is, well, 2, you know, fighter escorts. This doesn't do any form of ramping, it doesn't attack, it just provides scout pairings, which can be good defensively, but then you have literally like half of all the, or like at least 1/3, probably half, of all the Floatoid stuff. That's just, if you have a Floatoid commander, I guess if you don't want to use a Floatoid faction, I guess it's there for you. But like, unless you don't want the commander or something, there is just Interceptor Swarm and multi-limit attack. Oh, you probably don't want to shoot yourself with that one. Or, actually, those are different. There's options, and a lot of them. Like raid cover as well. And you know, if you go for the one which actually has them, something like that would help. It's not hard to get them, and you know, you could even take these strike fighters, get a ship that helps you with the Floatoid commander. You have so many options to get like fighter escorts or strafers, I don't see the use in it. I know. How concerning. I don't know, I'm just like, there's better ways. And typically it's not that big of a deal if you can't, and this thing is not gonna save you if you can't. Because it needs time to ramp up, ironically, so what do I think? I am not flattered. Quite the contrary. I am frankly displeased. It's... I don't see the use. What can I say? Unless your goal is to get a ton of fighters. Actually, you know, I'm incorrect. There is one use, which I'm actually going to bump into the front of D tier. I know what an improvement. For this one improvement that I noticed. It does have a use. Emphasis on A. Because I forgot about one of the cards, because I never actually managed to play it. It's really hard to play this card. At least for me. I guess it's probably something about me being a babbling buffoon or something, right? Leave this one. In-flight rerouting. Converts all escorts, including the ones on your ships. So that would be, you know, fighter escorts or strays. And it converts them to a bomber variant. It can be used infinite amount of times. So essentially, you can convert the 4 fighter escorts you get from that card into 4 bombers. It also gets +1. So as you can imagine, that's actually pretty dang good. And so anything that can actually produce scouts, to be honest, is actually pretty good. Because you could, theoretically, you could build into that. I just find that to be so rare that, you know, the launch plank every 4 rounds, you can get this to gain as much as you want. I guess you could also increase scout pairings. So you can make 3 couples, and that would make you 6. Technically, the ramping's better, but it's more of a gamble. And, again, I want the auxiliary to be the solid baseline. Again, the flagship is something in this game. It's funny. I'm putting it at high D tier. I just don't see it being terribly solid. And on to another one I'm not too pleased about. As you already know, I'm not too much of a fan of healing. And the host spot applies 2 health over time to all allies, no matter where they are. So, every 5 rounds, that's 2 health for every ship on your side. And by, like, I mean this side, not boarded vessels. And to which, I mean, that could be a lot of health. I try to keep my ships within 3 to 4. That's less, and, you know, mines or bombers, it's just better. And to be honest, like, it's not great, in my opinion. And that is the sad thing about a lot of these ships. I don't think any of them need to be reworked, but this is a hard game. If you want to win, you can't just be choosing things because, you know, scout pairing sounds interesting, or flame juggler conceptually is pretty good because this game has a weird way with not meeting expectations. I'm gonna put this in low C tier. It has use, you need to have a plan to obtain ramping damage within a high chance, you know? Yeah, I'm not sure the screen is black for a moment. It's something. Now onto a ship I've won many runs with. Integrity. Now you might be looking at Integrity and say, 4 radiation every 3 rounds, with 3 health and no damage, but it has Pierce. That's not at all ramping damage. How are you winning with it? And the reason for that is I can get this thing's base damage to be so high that it can sometimes actually match what's required of a high DPS build. You mix this with the Death Glimmer Commander, who's also from the end tech. The reason why I say that is because their commander ability is it lowers their max turns and it adds Decay Amp, which on its own is literally useless unless you fire like a Hyper Deck that shoots relatively soon. In this case, however, that turns 4 radiation into 4 instant damage, along with destroying, security in the same time. So it's actually pretty good. Keep this in the back after your tank, and just keep hitting things with radiation. And when I say that, I mean you should be playing cards like, for example, the X-Ray Beam Caster, Hyper Nuke, Radiation Projector. Those should be cards that you're trying to prioritize using. Because, especially if you can get double turns, applying 6 radiation debuff plus 2 damage, that's 8 damage, but most of it's over time. With Amp, that goes to 1 instance. The damage of that is really high. That's 8 plus 4, that's 12 damage in a single turn. Right? And it gets rid of borders, and it's technically lowering max HP so they can't even heal. It's strong. It's really strong. The downside is, again, it's over time, that's on a 2-round basis. It's good, but because of the lack of ramping, when you get to the second last boss that has 80 HP, you might feel a little underwhelming. And it really quickly becomes less of a you hit like a truck to a you hit like a truck, except it's a wall designed to absorb such impacts, and you have to hit multiple times to get through, rather than you hit really weak, and you progressively get stronger to the point where you can just destroy anything. So, it's downhill, or it's an uphill battle throughout the game instead of being a downhill, but I have won on numerous occasions, and it used to be what I considered to be the strongest build before I went fully into mines. So yeah, obviously that means I'm going to be putting this one in A class. It's just so solid. Low A class, it's not ramping. And next up we have a bit of an interesting decision. B class for creativity. And the reason, this is way faster. The reason why I'm putting creativity in C class, it actually got buffed recently, is every 4 rounds it has 6 health, and it hacks the enemy by, 3. So hack removes anything they do, so if they leave AM seated, if they do contain, piercing even, sometimes heavy armor, which is really, really funny that you can hack away armor. It's pretty funny. And just on the side, it's like, for a debuff ship, right? And as you know, with EM and Contain, I put them pretty low. Hack is, for occasional debuff, it's pretty good. And with Integration, you can bump this up to 5 and you actually start building it, which won't really do anything, but hey, Data World exists if you forgot. Overall, if I'm planning to just find another ship, or do a build which is not super reliant on auxiliary, creativity normally is chosen just because it's really convenient to just sort of limit the enemy. And finally, restraint. This is a very powerful shield. It does 2 damage over 5 rounds, which who cares? Has 8 HP, but when hit, it gives you mega boost. So essentially, turn counter goes down by 1 every time this gets hit, including if you do something with like a fuel strike. So yes, very, very strong. The problem is I'm either forcing the strikes after 1 move, or taking like 5 moves before finally moving on, and I rarely play into restraint. It's nice health, I would say that's defensively a downgrade from the Inventor class. But if you can play into that Mega Boost, yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I'm not too thrilled by its performance. Which is to say, I'd put it in low P tier because there's not much in there. As you can see, the distribution here is actually not too bad. I thought it was going to be like, you know, you have 2/3 on the bottom and like 1/3 in B, and A had like, well, 4 ships I already knew these would be in there. But I knew, like, I thought B was going to be vacant, C was going to be fuller like to here, and D is also really damn high. But no, actually, the distribution is not terrible, and as you see, I don't think anything needs to be reworked. Do I think there's some that can absolutely be better? Yes. There's some that really could use a buff. Rework? No. Buff? Maybe. If we're saying buff anything below C tier, for example, you know, medic class, make bot hosts more useful, make scout pairing, it's just RNG fest on that one, it's not too impressive. Flame, like, fundamentally, I don't see how you can make these strong. Flame Juggler is a really strong one if you can focus on exclusively one unit, but that's not always how the game works. So, you know, conceptually and functionally, this is a really strong ship, and I don't think it needs to be buffed. The problem is the usual use case for a ship like this is just kind of missing. Which is a long roundabout way of saying, I don't think there's actually a bad auxiliary ship. I don't have any fixes to list. As you know, I spent a lot of time on the other ones saying that. However, right, some of these just, like, I'm not using the linked card, I'm not using the EM, I'm not using bot host or speaker, maybe I've used speaker a few times, right, like, the medic one I'm not using, like, I think I wouldn't even really use the crit one, unless I want to go do something, like, I've never tried that build, I'm going to try it after. Like, there's not a single one of these I think is bad. They all do what they say on the tin. Some do it really well, you know, like the Light Destroyer doesn't even have the right thing on the tin, but it does it really well. The short and simple, right, is that nothing here really needs a rework, but if you want to win, there are definitely some options with ramping that are simply better than others. Even with ramping, like Flame Juggler is just not great. Again, this game is really hard, and I know I play with all these difficulty modifiers, so maybe if I remove all of them, I'll find the game easy. Even though, like, I'm not going to let my commander die. That's just something I'm not doing anymore. I'm not going to try and let ships die either. Because yes, using ships ablatively can be great early in, like, learning, but it makes a bad habit of sacrificing ships, and you add the difficulty one where you get penalized, and the Meg getting hit has maybe more restraint with it, although I've already covered there's a mega ship in there. For combat, that gives a system error. So I'm like, I don't know, man. It's just, this game obviously is a strategy game. It's complicated, it's in depth. And overall, right, like, you can see I have a lot of the stuff unlocked. Like, I've seen a lot in this game. There's some stuff that I've never taken because I just do not have a use for them. Right? Like, yeah, I don't even know what this complication is. And I would think I would know that by now. Yeah, like, there's so much stuff in this game. And, like, how can you sensibly predict something? Like, say what's gonna be good, or again, it's all up to RNG as well, so, you know, like, heck, Gunboat doesn't seem good, but it goes every 2 rounds, so stacking effects on that is pretty good, right? Like, this Guard Sloop can be pretty fun. Just, there's, like, Projector Barge is good, but I'm not gonna look for the Projector Barge, because again, look how big the pool is. This thing's pretty cool when I unlocked it, but guess what? I can't force it out. There's no rerolls, there is no guarantees. It's all just spur of the moment and hope it works. And something like hits every single enemy, but does 1 damage, is not going to be nearly as good as the Persecutor class that attacks the boss 3 times in a row when this only does it once. It's just, there's so much complications. You need to get a feel for it. You can't just look at guides. Learn by doing. I definitely think there's some things that might, trick a new player, but like, the assault rig, this is really good. This wasn't originally listed, so it seemed like 50-50. I'm like, yeah, well, it only works on military. It's just like, how do you know? I'm like, if it does damage, they finally listed it, but like, I don't know, there's just some stuff I'm like, I don't really, like, I've never used Nightmare Operations, personally. I don't even know how entanglement works at all. Because apparently it's just 2 ships now take the same damage or something. And I still have things I have yet to unlock. So I'm like, it's just like, yeah, like I'm not gonna use this because I don't want the Meg to suffer any damage. And don't buff this card because that will increase that damage. But I'm like, this is really strong. That's 7 damage with Pierce. Don't want to take damage. Or, ooh, look, this thing, really good, but then you can't use bots to repair your Meg, which literally only nerfs the worst Meg in the game at the moment, so who cares? But it's just like, there's some stuff here that, like, frankly, I think there are some builds that I would love to play with more. Like, okay, not that one. This would be great, but there's no way to add a priority to a card. Like, if I could put this as a priority card, it's always pulled. I hear something like scratching on my headphones. Hold on. I think it's just the audio in this area. It's pretty, like, janky. Gunner and plant bots, those are cool. Can't really use them comfortably. CVG is hilarious, and I love it. I don't care that it kind of sucks. You put, you make this a, what is it called? High readiness. And then you apply the, assault rig to that. So now you do 12 damage to every unit before you play any of your ships. That is hilarious. Right? I don't know, all I'm trying to say is, this is complicated. I've never used that. I've used this to limiting success. There's a ton of crates. I've never even used this before. Maybe I have. Would never have used this because it's just difficult to apply. Like, there's a lot of stuff. I've never even used this. 2 cards in hand. See, this would be really good if you could find something dumb to play it on. Right? There is so much that you can work with. And it's a very, like, diverse game. I just wish the game wasn't as hard. Because unless you plan to do the game optimally, you're gonna get your ass kicked. And that's, like, a hard guarantee. At least from my experience. I don't know. Experiment. Have fun. Come up with weird, wacky runs. For example, I was doing this. Like, you can do a lot. I wouldn't say this is optimal the slightest. Like, what is really my combat ship here? Yeah, this build has no ramping on it. It's not very good. However, it's kind of funny. This should last me until 5th, 6th boss, but I'm not beating the game with this kind of build. There's not much to work with. And that's just, I think the whole idea is I just do a high and frequent damage. So, I don't know. Certainly is interesting. Give it a try. Do some dumb builds. And, yeah. I think I might even try and finish this run. So yeah.